We are live.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I love the fact that all of our meetings start with the same words, we are live. So welcome to the what used to be board meeting and now the community meeting of Creative Future for March of 2016. And I am Hildy Gottlieb. We're gonna just go around and do a quick, just say your name, say where you are calling in from and what the weather's like today. So let's just sort of find out who we all are and where we are on the planet. I'm going to sort of go from where I am on the screen. I know it's different from for all of you, but Kim, tell us who you are, where you are, and what's the weather like today.
Sure, good afternoon. I'm Kim Loth. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we are waiting on thunderstorms.
Wow. And Loretta?
Okay, I'm Loretta Donovan in Brookfield, Connecticut, about 75 miles north of New York City, where it is chilly, 45 degrees and rainy and gray.
What is it going to be like over the weekend? I'm going to be in Boston over the weekend.
It's going to get very nice. We're planning an Easter egg hunt, so we've been tracking the weather.
Yay! Yay! Mr. Alford.
Hi, my name's Troy, and I'm in San Diego, California, where it is the same, like, nice 60, 70 degrees that it is, like, 10 months out of the year. Although it's a little overcast today. We've been getting a little rain the last couple of weeks.
Oh, good for you guys.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yay for you.
The cactuses are drowning.
And that's what we want to see in San Diego right now. Yeah.
Sure.
Justin.
Justin Pollock. I'm in Washington, D.C., where it is dreary and 60.
Dreary and 60s, okay. Mr. Pittman.
Well, I am in, my name is Mark Pittman. I am in Greenville, South Carolina, and it is a lovely, sunny 75. So much better than the weather in Maine.
Yeah, no kidding. Which is where you would have been had you not moved recently.
That's right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Angie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angie Eikenberry, and I am in Omaha, Nebraska, where it is beautiful, sunny, blue skies, and 76 for the high today.
Ooh, wow.
Warmest winter on record.
Wow. And it's feeling like spring. So spring is in a week, and it seems from everything you guys are saying that it's sort of springy. Rebecca?
Hello, this is Rebecca Hurd. I'm beaming in from Nampa, Idaho today, where it is 40 and blustery.
And what is it like at home in McCall?
It is the snow globe, and I wish I was there. A whole week of snow in store up in McCall, where my home is.
Wow. And Jane, hello, I'm glad you're here.
Delighted to be here. Jane Garson, coming from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where we did break records on Saturday for warmth, but today is raining and kind of cold and wet. Not cold for March, really, for Canada.
Well, it is wonderful to have you guys all here. For anybody who is watching via the blog, please note to tweet your tweets to the hashtag #CFuture and answer questions, ask questions, dive in, and if anything is standing out to you, just sort of any reflections, tweet away. But if you use the hashtag #CTFuture, that is what we're going to be watching for. And if you don't use it, we won't see it. So, and for those of you who are inside the meeting here, if you are so inclined, I know that every once in a while people can't help themselves but tweet and go to it, have at it. Justin, preferably not while you're driving.
Unless you have a voice assistant, Justin, then it's okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm Dimitri Petropoulos. I'm in Tucson, Arizona, and it is absolutely beautiful today. I don't even know what the temperature is. It doesn't matter. It's a really beautiful day.
Sorry, I forgot that. Dimitri's like right there. So at some point you may, because of the reverb, we mute his mic and it all flows through my machine. And so if at any point you hear me say, speak up, they can't hear you, it's because he's got a scream from his desk, which is about like right there.
So this is the Saturday Night Live, the news for the hard of hearing. Hello!
Well, Garrett Moritz sketch.
Way to pull that out of the archives. That was wonderful.
Yeah, well, I'm like football guy, so.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, we won't go into that. We won't go into that. I am just so glad all of you guys are here today. I'm glad everybody is here out in the Twitterverse, but I am especially delighted that you guys are all here today. We've got really amazing and interesting and exciting stuff to talk about. Like to start the meeting always by reminding everyone of our mission and our vision. Creating the future envisions communities where people are living well individually and collectively. We know such a future is possible simply because it is not impossible. To accomplish that, our 10-year mission, which by the way, we're about 2 years into, kids, is to change the questions embedded in the day-to-day work of individuals and organizations so that everyone naturally brings out the best in each other and in our world. And that is what we are here to further today, which is pretty fun. As we always do, starting out with what is awesome in people's lives. And Dimitri just ducked out to go. I was wondering, why is he not there? He just ducked out to see that everything is working. Anybody's got anything awesome going on in your life? It doesn't have to relate to creating the future, but if it does, that's great. If it relates to your kids, if it relates to anything, what is going on in your life that is awesome these days?
I'll go. My Creating the Future awesome, well, there's a long list, but today I will focus on all of the incredible work with the faculty and curriculum development team as we are preparing our next class in catalytic listening, which will start in mid-April, and Troy will be a part of that, which we're so delighted. And in my emails with everyone who's going to participate, we work with what does life look like for people? So that means taking everyone's calendars and seeing where we can find overlap. Yeah, Mark, your eyeballs popped out of your head. That's exactly. So, but in my last emails this morning, it looks like we may have the schedules for all of our cohorts figured out today. And that's working with everyone being flexible and being open to a whole host of emails that are all going on simultaneously with people in so many different time zones. So pretty awesome that we should have that nailed down today. And my other awesome is today I'm in Teach for America Idaho office. My host Levi will be here in about an hour and he'll be joining me. And I'm here today because I'm about to go down the street as soon as our meeting wraps up for the community hub that I co-facilitate with this beautiful community every month. So Levi's the co-host of that, and also at the invitation of come be a part of this as well. So when he jumps in, he knows he'll be coming in late, but as always, we give quick context to make everyone feel welcome.
And you are leaving tomorrow on vacation.
Yes, I'm going on vacation with my husband tomorrow morning.
Wow.
So,
Enjoy.
thank you.
Which is huge. Yay.
And Rebecca, of course, is part of my awesome because working with her and Hildy on getting the new Catalytic Thinking in Action blog started has been really exciting to work with them. We're really jazzed up that it's going to exist, and you're all invited to the open meeting on April 5th, where we're going to try and shape this new critter and make it an amazing resource for everyone looking to apply catalytic thinking to whatever they do in their day. And that blog will be available after this meeting.
Well, I'll jump in. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Alexandria, Virginia, to give almost a final hug to Jane Magruder Watkins, who has been one of the gurus of appreciative inquiry, and sadly, she has Alzheimer's disease. But a very happy thing happened there because David Cooper Ryder, who had envisioned AI from its inception, met with us to talk about bringing an enormous initiative to the education field for K through 12 schools throughout the United States. And I'm on the lead team. Actually have a meeting this evening with one of my Canadian friends. We are going to raise $2 million as seed money to begin the initiative. And I'm not a fundraiser, as most of you know. So this is a daunting task, but very exciting.
Wow, wow, wow. That's very, very big and very exciting. And I just want to share how grateful I am that you're here, Loretta, and you, Jane. The blog that you're creating is part of my awesome for sure. And it's been fun to watch that develop. Who else has something going on that's awesome in your life, personal, professional? Go, Mark.
I do. I've got this awesome report.
Oh, yeah.
Nonprofit sector leadership report. It's coming out tomorrow. It's the short version is I had seen a lot of people saying a lot of things about leadership in nonprofits, and I decided to see if it's just test the assumption, see if the data backs it up. And instead of just talking to the executive directors and board members, I also talked to senior leaders, middle managers, staff, volunteers, and leave it to me to be so excited about something that's so awful. Their statistics are so grim and so bad, but I think it's going to arm the people in the community benefit organizations to have the really tough discussions that they need to have. And as I was just telling a Chronicle of Philanthropy reporter, to remove the personality from the topics and not say, I'm not attacking you as a person. Let's look at the system. And what are we trying to create together? And what happens if you're hit by a moose and you can't come into work tomorrow? I am from northern New England, so hit by a moose resonates with me. But I'm just so excited because this is one of those things that it's been a labor of love since All Fall. Over 1,000 people took the survey, and consistently have glitches along the way, but still, it's just a testimony to how many people you can network with. And when you're doing good, people just want to help. And it's really fun. I'm really excited to have this rolled out. I've been sitting on it too long. I can't wait to let it go.
Yay. Yeah. You also have a major transition happening within your business.
Okay, so thank you. This is the debut of the Concord Leadership Group, which the group consists of Concord Leadership Group, fundraisingcoach.com, which I'm best known for, and the Nonprofit Academy, which has low-cost, high-quality training. And instead of just putting out a new website, for the last 4 years, I've had clients asking me I don't want your fundraising help. I want your leadership stuff. I want to learn how to improve employee satisfaction or whatever. And so many of you on the screen here can know how great it is when clients draw out of you what's in you and you didn't realize it was there or you'd forgotten. So as a Franklin Covey guy, I'm really glad to be growing into the fullness of what I thought I was getting into 12 years ago. And instead of just putting up a new website and saying, hi, I'm here, I decided as a nerd, to do a report that Jen Shing over at the Center for Sustainable Philanthropy in the UK asked me after reading the report, said, so are you ready to do your PhD now? Which I am, but feeding kids is important too. So we'll find a balance. It's a balance, yeah.
It is. It's entirely balanced. Wow. Awesome. What else is going on in you guys' lives?
I'll jump in because you mentioned Jen Shang, which I'm going to be hopefully seeing her this summer when we go back to the UK for a few weeks. And we stay in Exeter, which is about an hour train ride from where she is. So hopefully we'll spend some good quality time with her. She's great. So if you're going to do a PhD, either with her or you can come to UNO.
Well, she'll be able to drive to you now. Do you see?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I would also like to add my awesome, which I just found out a couple weeks ago that I won the research award for our university for this year, which is a big deal. Unfortunately, very few women have won this award and very few people that do the kind of work I do. Usually it's more, science folks or, big money, bringing in big money folks. I don't bring in a lot of big money, but so it's very exciting for our college and school as well. And then I would like to just add quickly my Creating the Future Awesome is just that I continue to try to integrate some of the ideas that we had from the catalytic thinking class into some of the committees that I have been leading. And in particular, our policy search committee. I think it came ultimately to a good conclusion around who we wanted to offer the job to in a consensual way that I think a lot of it, the structure and things were motivated by my learning. I think ultimately people felt good at the end of the day with the decision, and we're now in negotiations. Hopefully it will be a good end result. Thank you.
Yay, yay, yay. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah, it's been going on for a long time.
Justin.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. I think I'll ride Mark's leadership coattail. So I just finished up on Friday the 3-day launch of the second iteration of a leadership fellowship that I helped develop for the School-Based Health Alliance. And it is just incredible. It's the whole thing has been designed with, it utilizes and it teaches catalytic thinking as sort of the undergirding of thinking about leadership development. And these are all folks who are in non-leader positions in the field. And I just love working with them and just how excited and curious they are and how their eyes just light up when they see leadership as something that's accessible for them in their everyday. And so it was really cool. It was really awesome. Sort of as we were finishing up and reflecting, that one person said, when we started 3 days ago, the things we were talking about seemed so giant and just unattainable. And I feel like in 3 days, it all seems doable for us. So that's pretty awesome.
Wow.
Yay. I wish you could see all the heads nodding and smiling. Fabulous. Who else has cool stuff? What was that, Justin?
I just wanted to say it will be kind of hopping on and off, but I will be in a meeting at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So if I disappear, that's why.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're glad you're here, Justin.
Yeah.
Definitely. I have a couple of awesomes I want to touch on.
Okay.
Yeah. First one is what we're doing right now. This to me is remarkably amazing. We have a live Google Hangout going on that has embedded this, a Zoom, basically meeting room, where we can have people on the phone and we can have all of these amazing faces. So this is being broadcast live, which is remarkable. Tied to that, this is through an entity called Zoom, and about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, I got to have a conversation with the CEO and founder of Zoom around how we're using Zoom and how Creating the Future is using Zoom. And he was both intrigued and excited at the possibilities of wanted to learn about the Kludge and how we're doing this.
How Dimitri has made this work.
And how they are working on doing this, the ability to do a live broadcast themselves directly. But in any event, it was just incredible to talk to someone who goes back to China in 1995, wanted to communicate with his girlfriend who wasn't in town, and was trying to figure out a way of using video and audio to do that. And voila, here we are here. So to me, it is a wonderful path and an amazing story. And woohoo to Eric Kwan for doing that and for being sort of the inspiration behind a lot of this stuff in the industry and now Zoom.
One of the things and just to tack on to that, one of the amazing things we talk so much about the fact that while many of us, just because of Dimitri and my heritage in the world over the past 20 years, many of the people in this room right now are related in some way to the community benefit nonprofit sector. But many are also not. And Dimitri and I always walk that fine line of being in the business world and being in the community world. Eric is solidly in the business world, has been in the business world forever. He's the CEO of a startup in Silicon Valley. And when I had the opportunity to talk to him as well, what he talked about is the fact that as the CEO of Zoom, he sees his job and he sees what the purpose of Zoom is to deliver happiness. And I just melted.
That's their tagline. I mean,
is it really?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. So the fact that the work that Creating the Future is doing, it just proved to me over and over, and that was just like the nail in it that says, this doesn't depend on sector. This is about people wanting to be the best that they can be and delivering happiness throughout the world. So yeah, I just needed to add that in.
No, that's fine. And for the geekiness or the geeky people amongst us, he's the one who invented and created WebEx. If you go back and which was eventually purchased, but WebEx was a separate company, and that's sort of his path. Is he's been doing this for a long time, and then started this startup of Zoom about a year ago. I think it was
a little bit longer, but
maybe a little bit longer than that, but it's really amazing. My second, awesome, because I don't want to take up too much time here, is that I have not seen my upper lip since I was a sophomore in high school. And so it is remarkable to know that I have one, first of all. And to just be surprised every time I look in the mirror. I'm sure, Mark, if you were to shave yours off and you started looking in the mirror, you'd go, who the heck is that guy?
Yeah.
Don't shave, Mark.
Don't worry, I just don't like shaving, so it's too much upkeep after.
And that's what I discovered is, wow, this is a hassle.
Every day, people notice. Yeah, but it looks great, and this resolution, you look great.
Thank you. That's my other awesome.
It's been very weird, I gotta say. I've never known. There's a stranger in my house. Yeah, so. Yeah. Kim, Troy, what's going on with either of you that is awesome? And anybody that is out there in the Twitterverse, please tell us what's awesome in your world.
Well, I'll go ahead and chime in. Just wanted to say, first of all, how much, particularly the Facebook group, has meant to me, and how exciting it is to see people's faces and hear their voices in this platform. It really is kind of exciting, and I was really thrilled to get to be part of this today. My consulting practice has gotten off to a great start over the last 3 years, and I give a lot of that credit to that Facebook group with helping with the learning curve, because I went into it thinking that I had to know all the answers, and what the group taught me was that I needed to know how to ask the questions. So I'm just really, I just really want to give kudos there, because I think it really changed the way I interacted with my clients, and the things that we've been able to do and the success we've been able to create attest to that. I posted about this on Facebook, but I'm going to say it anyway because I'm so excited about it. I started my nonprofit career about 25 years ago working in an AIDS hospice after I lost a cousin to the disease. So I went in as volunteer coordinator and started fundraising. I didn't even know that was a career, and the rest is kind of history. But in all this time working for nonprofit organizations, it's been really hard for me to plug in and help as a board member or on events or things. There's been always conflict of interest issues that have arisen. And since I started the consulting practice, I've been able to get on the board of our local HIV/AIDS charity here. And I helped them by chairing our first ever Ask event, and we did gave an award to our mayor. And I never would have imagined 25 plus years ago, when we were arguing with funeral directors about how to bury people who died of AIDS, or with doctors and nurses about, you don't have to wear a beekeeper suit when you go into a room with somebody with AIDS. that I would stand in front of a room and look at 350 people in Knoxville, Tennessee, all there to support people with HIV. And so that was not only a win for me this week, but probably one of the most wonderful moments of my life.
Oh, I just got chills. Oh, Kim, thank you. Troy.
I wish I would have gone before that. Two things. I guess I'm just really appreciating and reveling a little bit right now. I took a new job in August of last year, and a few months ago, the company that I work for, Appfolio, was rated as number 24 for like all small and medium-sized businesses in North America and Europe. It's like top-rated places to work. And as a director here, I feel like I'm starting to really get an opportunity to be a part of that, to build that culture, to I guess help to drive it to the next level and that sort of thing, which is just really, it's really a phenomenal experience. I'm surrounded by really great people and I'm learning a lot. So that's pretty awesome, and I'm reveling in it right now. And the second thing is that Wednesday is my 3-year anniversary with my girlfriend. So that is a wonderful thing as well.
That is a wonderful thing. A wonderful thing. Well, one of the things that I'm reveling in, I have to say, is the connections that I'm seeing on my screen. Kim, you mentioned the Facebook group, and Mark's face lit up as probably the lead facilitator in that group. I'm looking at the fact that the last time I saw Angie and Troy together was in a class 3-4 months ago, and it's nice seeing you guys together on the screen. That Loretta, I have known you and Jane and Mark probably as long as I've known anybody, through what was Charity Channel 122 years ago. And so there's just these amazing confluences of just everything that I get to work so closely every single day with Rebecca and Dimitri, and so I'm just smiling to see all of your faces, and Justin, to hear your. I wish you weren't a phone icon. I wish you were really Justin. But the connections all just feel very, very warm and good and awesome. And for any of you who are out in the Twitterverse, please tweet to us with your awesomes. And also, if you get a chance, if you see the agenda at the blog post, click on the video of describing what it is to focus on awesome. Which is, I don't know if you guys know the Vlog brothers, Hank and John Green, but this is an old video that Hank did many, many years ago, talking about the fact that, yeah, we do need to focus on some of the problems in the world, but we also need to reach for what's awesome. And that is just, he talks about reaching for the awesome rather than always focusing on the suck. So,
speaking of which, can I add a second awesome that I forgot to mention, which is that once again, Deborah Beck has featured one of my blogs today in the Laramie Learning Project. And if you want to know more about how boards can operate, it is a fabulous resource. And she does this governance guru thing, collecting stuff from all over the web. This is the second time she's featured me lately. I'm so honored.
Yay. Well, and I forgot to add one very, very wonderful personal awesome, which is that they have opened a writer's space in Tucson. And I got to be there on Saturday. It was actually pretty funny. I'd never been in before. I had registered, done all my stuff. I was so excited, especially having moved the office into the house. It's like there's no room for anything here. There's no space for my brain. I was like, oh, a quiet, beautiful, open space. It'll be fabulous. And I walked in on Saturday. I was the only one there, and I was the only one there all day. And I'm thinking, oh no, this place is going to go down the tubes. I'm so sad because it's brand new. And so at the end of the day, I texted Dimitri and I said, I've been here all day. I got a ton done, but I've been the only one here. And he said, well, that's not surprising. This weekend is Festival of Books at the U of A. And people come from all over the world. The entire U of A mall is filled with authors, and it's like writer's heaven. There is like the kinds of lectures they have. Last year they had Noam Chomsky talking. I mean, it's like writer's heaven. And I'm sitting there wondering, why am I all alone?
It's like the fourth largest book festival now in the country.
Ooh.
And lined up, how can we come and be here? So I was telling Ellie, it's like the Mecca for authors.
Right, and I'm sitting there wondering why I'm by myself in the writer's space. But it is an office that was an architect's office designed with all this natural light, and all of the furniture is still there, all the fixings are there. It's just, so I have a place to be and write, and that's exciting. So yay and yay and yay. Looking at the agenda, and Justin and Angie and Dimitri, you would be the ones as board members, if we still have this remnant of board members, to note, is there anything else that we need to talk about that you guys can think of before we dive into the agenda here? This meld of is this a board meeting, is this a community meeting? We're going to have to figure that out too.
I think we're good as far as I'm concerned. Looking at the agenda.
Angie, anything that's occurring to you?
No, nothing to add.
Okay, Justin?
I agree with both.
Yay. All righty.
You're not reading that as you're driving, are you, Justin?
Yeah. I hope you guys had a chance, and I know that I sent this out yesterday. I apologize for the lateness of it, but I will. I'd like to just take a little bit of time to bring everybody up to speed as to where we've been and what point we are at here. One of the interesting things about creating an open community where people can step in whenever they either find out about it or feel called to, or making sure there's as many on-ramps as possible, is, you heard Rebecca say before that when Levi gets here, we will welcome him and bring him up to speed, because that's how we be with each other. And it's one of the immediate things that you realize when you open the door and invite anybody in is, once they get there, you want to be as welcoming as possible. Otherwise, they're walking in the door going, I don't know where I fit, and then they leave. And so while part of, I always chuckle, our meetings have been open like this for years, and I'm frequently asked why, and I usually talk about the fact that people everywhere, it doesn't matter what sector, are always concerned about how they can bring people in and engage people in their cause, whatever their cause happens to be. We can't get people to come in. And I always laugh and just say, well, the first step is probably open the door. And so we've opened the door, we've put the welcome mat down, but one of the other things that we realized is you can't just open the door, you need to have someone, a guide, the greeter at Walmart, to say, here's where you are, and we're happy you're here. And here's what's going on, especially, so that you don't feel like you're diving into the middle. So I just want to briefly bring us up to speed on where we have been, because this began a year ago, right about now, when very innocently our board started talking about board recruitment, and started to talk about, now that we are shifting from a startup organization to scaling up programs, the role and the nature of the board has changed, and we need to look at our board composition, which eventually led to conversations about, well, as we're recruiting people, what exactly are we recruiting people to? What is this board? Which, if any of you have been watching our meetings over the past, even when we weren't live, even when we were just blogging about our meetings, since day one, we've always smiled that board members have at various times said, this isn't really a board, this is a group of people trying desperately not to be a board. we've all experienced, whether it's in the corporate world or whether it's in the nonprofit world, the fact that boards are notoriously dysfunctional and don't work and don't contribute and they're not a meaningful part of the organization. They're just sort of this remnant that was patched on legislatively when it comes to corporations. And so what would it mean to actually be that board? We started to talk a lot about leadership, and then started to look at the fact that we have a mission to accomplish, which means spreading these ways of being in a way that's very movement-like. And many of you may have read the article that I did that compared movements and organizations. And we said, okay, so now starting with recruitment, all the way now we're talking about what would our board be if it were actively leading a movement. And that active leadership piece started to roll into a conversation that went, all of the things we've listed as active leadership, our staff and volunteers and teams are already doing. So then is the board redundant? Why do you have a board? And everything started to shift as we started to say, okay, what if we didn't have a board? What if we blew the whole thing up, started over and just said, if we were leading a movement to create this change around the world, what would that look like? And what would the structure look like that would support that? So the fun part is, and you've got governance geeks around the table. Carl, who hopefully will be joining us soon, is second in command at the National Council of Voluntary Organizations in the UK. You've got global governance geeks having a conversation about what would leadership be if we didn't have any of this crap that we had to deal with and we could just start over again. And then the realization that, oh, wow, we can just start over again. So the conversation that we had in December was, and I so credit Jane. Jane, your ears are probably buzzing a million times a day for the number of times that we all credit you with this analogy, where we talked about what structure would look like if it was really bringing out the best in everybody that was affiliated with the organization. And Jane's analogy was, when you look at the ocean, there are all kinds of various ecosystems in the ocean. They all, an ecosystem at the top of the ocean is way different than an ecosystem that has to survive at the very, very depths of the ocean. But what they have in common is that they're all in the ocean. And the decisions that are made up at the top of the ocean are very different than the decisions at the bottom, but there is that through line of we're all living in water. And what if creating the future was that supportive ocean? What if our mission, our vision, catalytic thinking as a way of being guided the various ecosystems of education and convening and research and development, that they all self-guided, self-governed, self-supported, but the ocean could also support them. So the education programs, for instance, might economically support themselves, but if we need scholarships, the ocean is there to support that. And so what would it look like if what we were creating was a support structure for all of the different programs that fractally had the values embedded into their decision-making, catalytic thinking embedded in their decision-making, and had at their core, we are here to bring out the best in the people and the situations that the people are encountering in our education programs and in our convening work, which would include the Facebook group, for instance, is a convening place. And so the place that we are at now is in January, that discussion of, oh my gosh, this is sort of kind of what it could look like, and nobody had a clue. I'll tell you right now, just pictures of we all sort of left with that Little Mermaid song, Under the Sea, in our heads, and that was about as far as we got. And in January, what we discussed was, okay, we have this image of what it could be. We don't know the specifics yet. It's going to take us time to figure out what this actually looks like and what a structure is. But in January, we had the conversation, which was, are we going to do this? And because at some point you either just keep going down the path and then you look back and go, hey, when did we decide we were going to actually do this? And it seemed like it was a logical point to say, we need to sort of make a decision here. And so we were welcoming Carl. So in January, the board and community members who came together after looking at this question for all of that time said, yeah, we're going to do this. It was one of those beautiful conversations where it started out with Justin asking, when I asked, is this something that we want to do? And Justin basically saying, this train has left the station. It's hard for us not to do this. There's no going back. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Angie asked a wonderful pair of questions, creating the future catalytic thinking questions of what's the worst that could happen if we do this? And what's the worst that could happen if we don't do this? And it just became so evident that the train really has left the station, and that decision got made in January that we will move forward and restructure this critter to best bring out the best in everybody that encounters creating the future and is working and living in this environment. So that is where we've been. And today is all about starting to figure out, okay, what does that mean work-wise? What do we have to do? What are the big pieces that have to get done? And so before we do that, I want to welcome Carl Wilding. And Carl is calling in from the environs somewhere around London in the UK.
That sounds about right, Hildy. Sorry I'm late.
I'm sorry it took me until last night to realize, daylight savings time means everything shift around the world. So I apologize for that.
Sorry I'm late, everyone. And indeed, I may not be able to stay until the end, but I'll hopefully make a contribution while I'm here.
Well, take a deep breath and tell us what's going on in your world that is good, because I know that NCVO is just fighting battle after battle these days, and you've been so in our hearts. And take a deep breath and find something awesome that has been going on.
Well, we're very much in the trenches at the minute. Charities and non-profits in the UK are under reasonably regular attack, sometimes for the things that they've done themselves where they need to improve, and at other times because they've been doing stuff that's unfair, and we need to sort of fight back on that. I think the stuff that I've just done recently that sort of makes me feel awesome is that somebody sent a message to my team saying that they were really proud of what NCVO and other charities were doing to sort of fight this stuff together, and that reading our blogs was raising morale in the office, and that sent me home feeling pretty good.
Oh, good. Wonderful.
So we'll get there.
Yeah,
I follow some of the UK stuff, so I know what the attacks are. That's been quite a series. Can I just comment? We're the only people that have a train in the ocean, but hey. I did want to add to the other part of the analogy that I talked about in December was that the ocean is full of currents that come together and split off, and this is one current here at the moment. It's a somewhat different group every time we meet, but unlike other boards, quasi-boards that I see, that doesn't throw off the discussions. They carry on. And that's partly because we have such a different way of making decisions around here. But I like the current analogy that you choose to join one and choose to find a different current to be part of, different part of the ocean ecosystem. There's no hard lines and boundaries in an ocean.
Oh, yeah.
And if I was to take that analogy just one step further, this is the primordial soup today. We've got all these little protein strands floating around, and whatever critter crawls out when we're done is sort of how I'm kind of envisioning what we're doing. Is the DNA or the strands are really the questions that we're asking, and that'll help shape whatever comes out of this. So to just use Jane's ocean analogy and to take it one step further in terms of creating something new.
One step too far, one might argue.
And as a matter of fact, I was just going to put the international no sign over no more extending this analogy.
I'm not primordial, Stu. I'll just let you know. I got a bow tie on, buddy. And a beard. Come on.
Well, maybe there's a divine intervention here. We'll stay open to all possibilities.
I said
No Deus Ex Machina.
Some jazz hands to stop that. Okay, cool.
Oh man. And one thing that I will just bring you up to speed on, Carl, because it is probably the most important thing in this entire meeting, is yes, that is Dimitri, and yes, that is his upper lip. And so we'll
You'll have to play back the meeting and you'll get the story.
But yeah. One of the things that you guys will see at the bottom in bright yellow on this sheet, then if you're watching along, it is in the blog post for the meeting, right under the video, and you can click on it. Is that some of the things that we talked about that needed to happen? You'll see above the yellow where it says, what do we need internally in order to accomplish the restructuring? And we talked about that a little bit last time after we made the decision to move forward. We talked about the need to find out legally what are our parameters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What can this be? We do know legally in the state of Arizona, you need one board member in order to be legal. But then there is also the question of if we take legal beyond the minimal legal and say, okay, let's look at the intent of legal. What does it take for the IRS, for instance, to be happy from a regulatory? So just from the legal and regulatory, what are the issues and what do we need to know? Questions of community engagement and on-ramps and welcome mats and Sherpas and guides, and so that when people come up against, especially, there's going to be two pieces to this. One is going to be once it's built, and one is going to be during this transition time, as people sort of come in the door. What are they coming into, and what are the systems that we have there to sort of guide them during the transition time, which leads to communication strategy, the whole issue of budget and financial support. What does this mean eventually? And what are the various financial models and resource models? And we look at resource and financial. We look at financial as a subset of resource in creating the future. So for those of you who are joining us right now, the glib line is we don't want money, we want what money buys us. And when we look at resources in creating the future, we look at the spirit of collective enoughness, which guides so much of our work, which is that together we have everything we need. That it's only when we're on our own that we experience scarcity. And on our own, we tend to look for money, but together we look for where are there people like you guys, for instance, who has the stuff, the wisdom that we need, that because together we're so much stronger than we are on our own. So when we look specifically at community engagement and on-ramps, a part of that is where are there resources that we can share. But when we look at budget and financial, that's a very discrete thing for us, is are there things that we need money for that, and what are they, both in the interim and when we're done. Administrative support is huge, because coordinating what will probably be a whole bunch of work teams and making sure that they are as supported as possible so that their best is being brought out of them. And then all the other kinds of infrastructure things that might come up. So I guess, and this is where it's always fun in a new project, where you're going, okay, what do we do first, and where do we start? And so I guess the place where I would like to go is what tickles you guys, first of all, out of that list, or what would you talk about as the top priority for us figuring out first? What do we need to do to create this structure? The end result of this is going to be a flow chart. That'll be, we'll do this, then we'll do this, then we'll do this, then we'll do this. When it comes to budget, we'll do this, then this, then this. When it comes to engagement, we'll do this, then this, then this. But which which do we start with? Yeah, Troy.
Okay, here's Loretta with her OD hat on. Willie Peterson, who had been the CEO of Seagram's, wound up teaching as an adjunct at Columbia Business School and came into my life, and I brought him into Girl Scouts of the USA, where he led the strategy work and continues to do so. And if everybody can imagine a baseball diamond, and we put in the center of the diamond on the pitcher's mound whatever it is that we think we want to work on. And simultaneously, not sequentially, simultaneously say, if I am going to get this done at the top of the diamond, what is it that I am looking for in the way of results, and what are the benefits and rewards that anybody could get from doing that? And then we go over to one side and say, then there are systems and processes and structure that we need to support that at the same time that we are working on those goals and results. And then we need a communication strategy at the bottom, and a way that people will be able to learn how to be able to do the things as we bring them into these various tasks. And then the last, and I think the easiest for this group, is articulating it through the lens of the culture of the group. So he says 4 things need to go on at once. They can't go on one after the other, or we will wind up being lopsided, which is what we love to see our nonprofits doing all the time.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I would agree with that. I had a wonderful conversation with Aaron Hurst, who wrote the I can never remember, Purpose-Driven Economy, maybe? I may be making that up. I had a podcast interview with him several years ago. I apologize, Aaron, for forgetting the name of the book. But he talked about the fact that only in the nonprofit world do we put infrastructure in place after we need it. Yeah. Anywhere else, we build it first. So that's what we're looking at here. Troy.
So I think I have a couple of questions kicking around in my head, and I think it's related to if I think about Loretta's description of like the diamond, what is in the center of the diamond? What's the thing we're trying to accomplish? Sometimes when I think about like what creating the future is, sometimes what I think of is a teaching organization, coaching and teaching coaches, education, etc. Right? One of the things. Sometimes I think that the way that creating the future presents itself is that it is a template organization. Like, here is a way of doing things that somebody else could pick up and do things the same way. But when you talk about nonprofits, educational organizations, a movement, for-profit business, and then we talk about the legal requirements and the systems and all of those kinds of things, my question is it an encompassing both and that this organization is an educational institution who teaches other people how to create their own what it looks like? Or is it a template organization where we say, here are a set of systems and processes that you can pick up and use. Here are the conversations to have. If you govern yourself this way, it is useful. Or is it both? Or is it neither? But I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about what's at the center of the diamond, because I don't know how I could approach systems and communication strategy and all of that without kind of thinking about that a bit more.
Great. The before, in the way that we saw it, I don't think functionally the functions will be different, but structurally, we used to talk about the fact that there were 4 pillars to accomplishing the mission. One was the very, very first one is the living lab part. That's the R&D function. That is researching what's already out there in the world that's working, bringing that in so that we can learn from it and others can learn from it, and developing where it doesn't exist. So that's the living laboratory. That's why this is all open. That's the template part. That's the part that says that whatever we learn, we want to share that with the world. The other 3 parts of the mission, one is the education, which is teaching what we learn. So once we learn what works, teaching that. in structured environments. Another is demonstrating that. So again, what we're doing right here is part of the demonstration of it. This is what it looks like in practice. But there's also demonstration projects that we do with other organizations. There's very much the initiative that Rebecca and Jane have been working on, which is about sharing stories of what works and how it works. That's the demonstration piece. So some people learn by going to a class, some people need to see an example of it. And then the third part of the mission, the fourth part of the mission is the convening part, which is bringing people together and just having different conversations. And the power of just being in a room, and Kim, I could have reached through the screen and kissed you on the forehead when you said that just by being in the Facebook group, which by the way is not our fellows, guys. This is a Facebook group that is open to any consultant or coach to community benefit organizations anywhere in the world. There's 450 or so, almost 500 people in the group who are just consultants. And just through the factor of bringing those people together and constantly bringing the conversation back to, it's about the questions, not the answers. You just very naturally, that was where you went, Kim, and just made me go, it's working. So the four ecosystems, if it were, that need to thrive are those four pieces of what we see will accomplish our mission. That if we bring people together and have that conversation, and it changes that conversation. Rebecca has been doing that for 2 years in a community in Idaho, where it's just bringing people together around a different conversation. If we bring people together, if we demonstrate what's possible, if we teach what's possible, and we're constantly learning and feeding that back out, then there's a very good chance our mission will be accomplished in the next 8 years, because we're watching the ripples happen. You're perfect evidence of that, Kim. Right now, we're watching the ripples happen as it goes now. So does that help to answer the question, Troy?
I think so. So it sounds like the answer is it's a both and. Where it's important to both be a demonstration of the learning while learning in a transparent fashion, and at the same time not trying to propagate that there's one way of doing things. I think that's the part of the ocean, right? It's breathing, being able to breathe underwater, being a gill-laden creature or whatever, is being able to ask the right questions, explore possibilities, etc. Not about the answer you come to, which is more about the ecosystem.
Right.
But at the same time, we should provide.
I'm sorry, Troy, go ahead.
But at the same time, we're providing examples of functional ecosystems.
Yeah.
And as a learning tool for people.
Yeah, and really what we're seeing, the ecosystems, you can also use the word commons. We're looking at where in the old structure we would have said, these are our education programs and we need a director of education. Now we will have an education ecosystem or an education commons where all of our education programs, that whole function is self-governing of what education programs should we have. It's not a board decision and it's not the director's decision, but that commons of education, and again, figuring out how will that be led? Who will lead that? How will decisions be made inside of that? That commons of education will determine what education programs make sense. If you have an idea for a webinar, do you come to the director of the organization? Do you come to the director of the education department? No, you come to a group of people who using catalytic thinking as their decision-making tool say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. What can we do to support you? So that ramp is open, that anyone can come and teach if they have something that fits into what that makes. So it really is seeing those, turning those programs that need to develop a director into a commons that can guide those programs to accomplish the mission and guide the convening effort to accomplish the mission, and et cetera. Does that but they're really the tools that we're going to use to accomplish the mission are those 4 pieces. It's just how those 4 pieces will be run, how they'll be structured.
It's more of a network than a hierarchy.
Yeah.
So in terms of how it informs and gets informed, it's not top down in terms of how it generates. Yet, what happens in one of the commons informs the rest of the network. And so there is a back and forth feedback that's going on that doesn't require an absolute, command structure that says, I know I have all the answers. This is what we're going to do.
And in part, it's already sort of kind of, and then I want to go to Carl and then Jane. In part, it's sort of already happening in that way. We just haven't defined it. That the way things are happening among people who are doing convening and the way decisions are made, for instance, in a Facebook group, is very different than the way decisions have been made in the education work and the faculty work. The through line is our values. The through line is catalytic thinking. But the actual framework for how decisions are being made in each of those environments has been very different. Carl and then Jane.
I'm seeing more and more of this sort of thinking in organizations at the minute that traditionally have had quite hierarchical structures and instead are trying to think about how to become networked organizations and seeing themselves as platforms for action on which people can sort of then do things themselves. My initial thought about what needs to happen at the beginning is if you look at organizations where common pool resources, I think are not depleted, they're shared and built upon. I think first of all, it's about behaviors. And we may need to codify the sorts of behaviors we expect people to see or to display. Maybe in the same school of as behaviors, if those are the right words. People need permission. All my experience of sort of having seen these sorts of things, people feel a bit fearful of doing something, and especially with respect to you, Hildy, and indeed some of the others around the table, because you are such strong personalities. I think there's always this sort of sense that we need your permission, or people need your permission to do stuff. So maybe that sort of comes into the sort of behaviors thing, and I think, I don't know if rules are the right word, maybe it is just behaviors, but we just do need to codify at some point sort of what people should or shouldn't do, and even should feels like the wrong word. But I think even if you're talking about capitalism and all those people who believe in complete laissez-faire capitalism, even then there are structures that enable people to do things, whether individually or collectively.
Yeah, I am deeply aware of and appreciating your naming it, the feeling, the need. What would it take for people to feel that they have permission, and don't need to come to mom all the time? Yeah, it's big. Thank you, Jane.
I wanted to get back to what Troy said. There's a tension of the people who would like templates for everything we talk about. Just tell me exactly what set of questions to ask in this sort of situation, and I'll go away trained and able to do it. Mm-hmm. And we're, I believe, always straining against that tension, because with people and being in different states of readiness and situations being different and groups being in different states of readiness within the group, you can't get much beyond the what's awesome in your life at the start and the what are your reflections at the end. Everything else is a fluid template that you have to understand the concepts well enough to be able to adapt to the situation. I think that's what we're trying for, is to be able to have people apply a template that's incredibly simple. Start here, end there, do what in between brings out the best in people and situations. If that's a template, I think that's about as far as we usually want to go in a template.
Yeah, Rebecca and then Troy.
I wouldn't be comfortable with saying we exist in part to make a template, because that leads to people saying, but I haven't got a tool that tells me exactly how to do my next committee meeting or whatever.
Well, and I think it may just be a matter of semantics in that framing. We are always providing an example, though, and an example of what is possible. And Stacey Ashton is always my go-to for that example, because Stacey has watched so many of our meetings and taken what she learns from what our board is discussing, what the community is discussing, takes it back and applies those questions in different ways, and it gets her thinking. She then applies it within her own group, in her own organization, in different ways. So it's the examples. Rebecca and then Troy.
Several things from different points in the last 15 minutes tied to the commons. With these 4 commons is that we have this thing called catalytic strategy that seems to work. So I think of looking at every one of our commons and using catalytic strategy to then drive, that will then inform what we need to do by taking that lens one at a time, knowing that they're interconnected and interdependent, but that will then yield the doing. And then when Carl spoke about kind of how we're going, like you look at our statement of our values in action, but let's go deeper, because if we go deeper to a page 2, that will be, and this is how we be together. And that will give more information around how we use catalytic thinking in our approach. It will, when people swim up in the ecosystem, whatever your familiarity is with creating the future or what's going on in there, they will always feel welcome. It will look different, feel different, but it's going to start to feel comfortable, because this is the way humans be together if we're bringing out the best in each other. And then just really of the whole topic around templates is there really aren't templates, because it's not a doing, it's a being. And we know if we replicate our thinking and not the doing, that's when those favorable results come forward. So I think a big piece of that is really being very explicit in the language, as we have been around. It's not, here's my thing to go do, but it's how am I showing up every day as a human.
Yeah, very much so. Troy?
So what's I love what both of you have just said about that. What I'm hearing is that there's that template maybe is a troublesome word. What's striking me is that, like in software, as an example, there's this thing called agile, and the idea is that you have agility, but people confuse that with do agile, as if agile is somehow like this verb that you're going to like have a set of instructions for, and you're going to go do agility. No, you be agile, right? You be nimble and flexible and responsive to what changes, etc. So I totally get what you're saying about there being like a paradigm difference between that. And what strikes me is that while it is impossible to say, here's an instruction manual for building your organization, which is just as applicable to a nonprofit as a for-profit business, as a et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's impossible, because the challenges and the changes and the people are always different, the products are always different, et cetera. It is possible to say, here is a set of tools and instructions for the kinds of problems that this tool can help you to solve. And then also to say, we have done a great deal of research, and our experience tells us that organizations, maybe of your variety or maybe organizations in general, tend to experience these types of problems, and teach people how to evaluate what they're seeing in their organization, step back from it and look at the meta. Oh, well, that falls into the category of this variety of problem. And now I know that I have 2 or 3 tools which I might use to overcome that type of problem. So if the problem that you're having is you're sensing a lot of alignment difficulties between your people and everyone's arguing, et cetera. Oh, well, when organizations fight against that, here are some of the root causes that we sometimes see. Here are some questions you might start to try and ask, or an exercise to go through with the group that is arguing that might help them to come to some clarity. And along with, I guess, So what I'm coming back to is, like for in software, again, we have morning meetings that are called stand-up meetings. And the idea is that you just get together and you talk a little bit about what's blocking you and if anybody can help you out, et cetera. It's not a universal panacea to any problem that we're going to have in the organization. It's a targeted tool for a specific thing, keeping your teams in sync with each other, making sure that nobody gets blocked from being able to make progress, asking for help. But it's not the only solution. And in fact, some cases, we throw that tool out the window because it's actually getting in the way and causing more problems. But it's useful to go from organization to organization where people talk about agility and all of them have this one tool. All of them talk about stand-up meetings, and you can have this common lexicon to go to any organization that is familiar with the idea of agile and say, oh, well, how do you use your stand-up meetings? Oh, I have this question. Can I bring that up in a stand-up meeting, right? Like, I wonder if does that help in terms of like lexicon to bifurcate the two things?
If there is a template, if there is a whatever we want to call it, the standard, it is catalytic thinking. And I that's sort of, getting back to what Rebecca was talking about is, I was, you guys have me thinking, and I'll share with you, I share in every single meeting. If you see my head go down, that just means that you've got me thinking, and I think that's when I'm writing. So, I got to find a way to, maybe I need a camera that goes up from here that still shows that I'm engaged. I'm with you, Mark. Yeah. I'm what I'm looking at is there seems to be a couple of things that are happening. I so love what you started with, Loretta, that all has to happen at once. I mean, it really does all have to happen at once. We've started enough organizations to know it all happens at once, whether you say it's going to happen at once or not. If you don't plan for that, it's going to happen at once. And then you're going, oh my God, where did all this stuff come from? The thing that I'm realizing all has to happen at once is because all of this is fractal, that whatever guides the decision-making and flow and engagement in the ocean that's supporting all of these four commonses has to happen simultaneously in that commons. And so the questions that I'm sort of playing with are one, both within the commonses and throughout the structure. How will decisions be made? So that for me is a question of, okay, what and then for each of these questions, what do we want that to accomplish and what will it take for that to happen? So what do we want decision making to be like? What do we want it to look like? And in each of the commonses and then throughout the ocean. What will it take for people and programs in that commons to be fully supported? So that's resources, that's administrative support, that is, so we dance between the theoretical, the framework of, okay, decision making is about how people be and how they think, but you're also going to need stuff. So you're going to need stuff like administrative support, and you're going to need a bookkeeper, and you're going to need those kinds of things that I'm not going to do anymore. One thought that sort of occurred to me as I'm thinking about this is that anybody who has been a salesperson or a fundraiser, which are both the same thing, pretty much. You're in charge of, you're in charge of bringing in revenue. If you're bringing in revenue to an organization or whatever kind you are, you're either the sales guy or the fundraiser.
Sales is the yes word. Sales is the yes word. No,
but despite your disdain, and fundraiser in the for-profit world is but anybody who's been in those positions knows that you can't be in that position without also doing a million other jobs. That you're never just the fundraiser. You're never just the sales guy. You need to know product. You need to be advising the tech support team that the reason I'm having problems selling this piece of software is because you in tech support don't know how to support it or don't know how to communicate, and we're getting a bad rep because of that. We all know that it never starts with that, and the word that was coming to my mind was an advocate for bringing the resources in, which is somebody that has to really understand what is needed internally by everybody in order for these programs to run. And what does that mean for communicating and that ambassador piece, connecting out into the outside world. It may not be the right word, but it's a different sense than you're going to be the sales guy or the fundraiser. So all of those sorts of very infrastructural questions, some on the stuff level and some on the what will decision making look like, and what will it take to ensure that decision making is rooted in, because I can tell you what decision making looks like right now at our board level. It is all rooted in our values, our vision, and catalytic thinking. And whatever comes out of those conversations, we know is the right decision. So if that's what happens at our board level, and that's what we want to see happen throughout, what would it take to ensure that? There's a whole function of engagement, which starts with communicating to invite people, that moves from there to welcoming them when they arrive, that in between there has a million things that have to go on as to what does it mean to welcome somebody and what are the pieces that you need to invite somebody. And so where I'm sort of thinking of these functions that have to happen, and within those functions, this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen. So in order for somebody to feel welcomed, there needs to be some communications pieces, maybe a video. So now you're getting down to the granular so that somebody will feel welcomed, which is all part of that engagement function. And I'm sensing very much, as you noted in the beginning, Loretta, that all those functions have to happen at the same time, but there's a sequence of actions within those functions.
Okay, I want to reflect on that because I love what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense to me. There's a little piece of me that says, how do you become less patriarchal in the approach that we use? Because taking full responsibility is a good thing. However, what it does is not allowing other people permission, which is one of the things you're aiming for. At the same time, I'm thinking of, there's a developmental model called constructive development theory that we use when we define whether or not an adult is moving from childhood into full adulthood. And I listened to Troy talking about whether or not people are ready to be able to use certain tools and templates. And it's almost as if we need to be able to step back a little bit and say, who is our audience? Who are these people, these organizations? And do we understand them as being more or less here or here or here? Because that will help us to know to what degree they need to be attracted to what we're doing, oriented to it, what kinds of tools they're going to need, and support to be able to go along the way. Because it isn't just one vanilla wafer. I mean, we all know all kinds of organizations, and we're talking about size and scope and geography and whether or not they're new or older. And some of them are new and flourishing, and some are older and flourishing. How do we actually speak?
Loretta, you're blipping in and out.
Really?
Your sound is blipping in and out.
Okay. If I sit still and stop waving my hands, is it better?
I'm getting a thing that says my internet connection is unstable.
Is everybody else hearing me?
No, I'm hearing you.
I'm the one blipping in it.
It's Hildy.
It's Hildy. Okay. Sorry, Hildy. I mean, I could repeat it all, but I don't think everybody wants to hear it. My point, though, is just in general, how do we know who we are trying to support? And are we understanding of how to do that in a way that's meaningful for them?
Yep.
See, this reminds me of something that happened with the Facebook group, and it's fascinating to me to hear that the Facebook moderators as a commons isn't necessarily the same decision making as the education space, but I really believe that having been totally steeped in this Facebook group for years and then on-ramping and setting expectations and trying to bring people to the place where it's not Hildy's group. Hildy isn't the great mama. We're a community. Well, she is a great mama, but we don't have to keep going, having her kiss Hildy's ring before we put a post up. Or before we question somebody else for putting a post up. Was that appropriate? I don't think that's in our norms. But all of that, having been so steeped in that, I was intrigued to hear that it's different in the education part, but I suspect that I would feel very comfortable with the differences because of the values. So I'm wondering, there's got to be something in that we can bring to the front, because I think what Loretta was maybe touching on, or maybe I'm just forcing my thoughts into that, is that not everybody's there yet. When people come into the Facebook group, they just want to start, posting links and promoting their stuff because that's how they act everywhere else.
That's right.
We're trying to create an environment where we are not like we are everywhere else because we're trying to create something that we haven't experienced or seen in other places. Is that all resonating? I mean, it's just shocking to me to hear. I'm really excited to hear the flexibility of the different comments having different decision-making structures. That's really cool.
Troy, go ahead.
My experience has been that the reason people fall back to command and control or patriarchy, hierarchical models, is lack of trust. It has to do with believing that one person has more context or more wisdom or more experience or more relevant knowledge or something along those lines than everyone else. And therefore that person is best suited to make a specific decision, control a specific resource, be the final say, etc. But I really, every time I think about that and we talk about, I hear people talk about, the different pieces of decision making, it strikes me what you said at the beginning of this, Hildy, is this underlying belief that the people limitation of context, of knowledge, of resources, of whatever, only happens when we're by ourselves. It doesn't happen when we're together. When we're together, we have everything that we need. So maybe we can separate the roles that need to be filled in decision making and the touch points that need to be accomplished during decision making and make that something which is a set of tools. It's part of like one of them might be, have we evaluated how this aligns to our values? Have we evaluated how we expend this resource versus other opportunities we might have to invest the same resource? Not to say, here's the final answer for how we evaluate those things or for what due diligence looks like, but has the group of people that are here involved in the decision gone through this series of steps as a group? And if so, then the default assumption is the people who are here have the relevant context, experience, knowledge, trust to be able to make that decision. And so there's a series of maybe roles that would need to be played at each meeting, and that might be common. And there's a series of touch points and rubrics that need to be fulfilled before decisions are made, and that might be common. But how each individual group goes about assigning roles, meeting rubrics, etc., that's totally up in the air. The people in the room have the wisdom. They can make that choice. It could be very formal, very informal, written, not written, whatever, right? And then perhaps you could even get away with saying at each convening of a specific group, it's not like we're going to assign this person as the leader of the group. And so every meeting, you could even rotate that, right? Like every meeting, part of the agenda, one of the rubrics is we're going to establish who is responsible for the next meeting, not to own it and rule it, but to schedule it, to get people together, to put out an agenda, et cetera. And that could even be different every time. Because my experience has been that progress is better than perfection. I would far rather have progress and chaos than complete dictation and perfection and stagnation. And it seems like we've got the ability to pull together a bunch of brilliant people, and it might be different people every time, right? But if you trust the people in the room and you give them some sort of a framework and a series of tools to use and just trust that they've used them accurately, I think you get good results, right? That's kind of what you're seeing in your board meetings already.
Troy, I really like your comment on, or your structure of asking the questions, are we doing this? Does this meet this criteria? And then within that, it could be very, very broad in terms of what happens. I wanted to, since I've got the floor for a second, we've had a couple of tweets that I wanted to touch upon. Thrive Child 15, which I believe
Karen Smith. Hello, Karen.
Which I believe is Karen. Thank you, Karen. She was commenting back on the ocean analogy. It implies that there's not one door, but many. Folks who fully swim and put a toe in, and it's to hold space. To hold the space, it needs to be organic and welcoming. Have an organic and welcoming structure, which I think is sort of relevant to what you were just saying, Troy, and doing that.
Could you say that again slowly, the whole thing, because it was really
the ocean
good.
Analogy implies not one door, but many. Folks who fully swim and put a toe in. To hold space, need organic, welcoming structure. Yeah. And
thank you, Karen. Really, 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 yeah.
And Stacy was responding, so thank you, Stacy, for being here. And I know you had mentioned Stacy, so I think she was initially responding to her being mentioned, and then went on further than that. She said, yes, sets of solutions when I struggle to apply the tools. It's when I let anger or frustration blind me, so how do I get unblinded? And then step back to what discussions are for. Getting everyone on the same page. You can do that top down or collectively or more ways, question mark.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I love that there's not one door but many. That's that currents thing that you were talking about, Jane. I'm starting to What I'm starting to sense is, and we talked about this a little bit last time, is the need for the benefit of, I should say, for lack of a better term, work teams of people who are interested in the various aspects of these functions that are then coming together. That if the teams are working separately, but keeping in touch with each other on a regular basis, these meetings might be the place where everybody's coming together. And obviously there's going to be communication between them on an ongoing basis. But the issues of, to me, legal is about this big, legal and regulatory. Legal and regulatory is a support function. It's a thing that has to happen. It's as far as I'm concerned, admin support. The interesting thing that we always hear is that you need a board because that represents the community that you serve. But if you open the door and the community is all here, then you're no longer talking about representing. You're talking about just you're all here, without having to quote unquote call it a membership organization. And so for me, the legal aspect of it is one piece of the bigger question. The regulatory aspect is one piece of the question of what does decision making look like? Because that's really what they want to know, is who's making decisions and how do we know you're making the decisions that are in the public benefit. Mm-hmm. So a big piece for me is that whole question of what does decision making look like, period. And I do love the fact, Mark, that you mentioned, yes, you absolutely would recognize if you came to a meeting where we were talking in the education place. Rebecca, always using the ocean analogy, always talks about no matter where you swim up, you'd feel comfortable and you'd recognize where you are. So that's a piece of it. So I'm seeing the decision-making piece. I'm seeing the engagement function. I'm seeing some of the questions around the stuff, the infrastructure stuff, admin support, financial support, those kinds of things. I'm seeing those as some of the functions that need to be considered. Jane, what do you got?
You sparked an idea as you were talking, Hildy. Representative democracy came about when there were too many people to meet in the town square, and whoever showed up made a decision, and everybody had one vote. Everybody being a little off at times, because I keep being told there was a democracy in Athens, and there wasn't, because only about 4% of the people had a vote, the adults had a vote. Nevertheless, the agora as a concept, where whoever shows up in the meeting square is the ones who will follow the process and use catalytic strategy and make the decisions, is the difference from the board as representative democracy in a member organization. I can go off on Greek democracy, quote unquote, for far too long, so I'll shut up.
We'll stop you now. No more Greek and no more Greek and the Greeks and the analogy thing. I don't.
It strikes me something about what you just said, Jane. Strikes me like I have found in my current position, we really believe strongly in having the person the lowest on the totem pole in the organization has the most context. They're the one with the most understanding of the problem space. They should be the one making the decision. We try to always push the decisions to the people that are most involved in the work for everything. So my role as a director is much more about making sure that those conversations happen, that I pull people's opinions, that I help them and facilitate that to move towards a decision, not that I make the decision, right? But what I found is that if what I do is I ask people, hey, go meet and come back to me with a decision, they have a great deal of trouble doing it. It's very difficult for them to come back with decisions. It's really easy for them to come back and tell me what they want to experiment with next. And I wonder if there's even just like some value in the verbiage around it. Like what's striking me is what you said about sometimes you're a little off. Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't have everybody's representation and whatever, sometimes you're going to make a decision that's not the perfect decision. But if, as a rule of thumb, you favor experimentation and learning over decisions and perfection, then that's okay. You know, what did we learn from it? And maybe we wouldn't make the same choice again. And is there some way to communicate that? But at the end of the day, you still move forward. It's still progress, right?
A thought that comes to mind as you're saying this, and I go back to the network analogy or the network concept, and I'm thinking of something like Wikipedia, where the end result is something remarkable and amazing that provides tremendous resource for people, and it's all done a little bit at a time with people who share who share a set of values or share a set of processes or whatnot. But there is no requirement that any one person be any one thing to participate in this, and so that because it's a huge network, it's very accurate. It self-corrects. It provides an output that is very different than if it had been a hierarchical entity, and one that is, I think, much more engaging because of that, and much more transformation because of that.
I think these sorts of models, like Dimitri, like you were saying, Wikipedia, I was actually just thinking of Apple and iOS or Android and Google. And it strikes me, if you look at what the common elements are here, is that you have someone in the center who is setting the culture and the behaviors and the rules or values, and we need guardians of that in the center. But then you're essentially saying to people, hey, go off, do whatever you want. Yeah, you make the sort of the decisions about what the app is that you want to develop this week, but then you'll come back, and if you want your app to be part of our system, we'll just sort of be that central check about whether or not your app fits with the way that we do things around here. And then it strikes me also, if you use the Apple and iOS analogy, there is someone's got to pay for that central function of dealing with the regulator and the accountants and sort of stuff like that. So there's a tithe. So when you go off and you develop your new app, you've got to make a small contribution to the center just to keep things running. And hey, you know what I mean? You might one day decide that you want to be part of the people in the center that are the guardians of values. But ultimately, you can go off and do whatever it is that you want to do. That's the devolved decision-making sort of stuff. So the stuff in the center, Hildy, whether we call it a board or whatever, We're the guardians of the values. We're probably the people in the center that says, hey, we need a new app for organizing in Seattle because they do things differently in Seattle. They're a bit weird out there. So we need a different app for what happens in Seattle. So we are encouraging people. These are the gaps that need filling. Hey guys, someone respond to that need. You go out and do it. It's up to you how you do it. Just has to fit with the values that we are the guardians of in the center. And then hopefully when you've done something that's been successful, that makes you successful and makes creating the future successful, you just have to tie the bit back into the central pot to keep the engine running. I'll start foaming at the mouth.
No. This is. I always wish these meetings were 4 hours long, but at about 2.5, we start like getting, crocking, and we're only supposed to be at 2, and then you go over. So, a couple of things that are occurring to me in identifying the functions that will be in this structure. It's asking what are the structure of those functions, not how will that particular function do what it does. So, for instance, the structure of you mentioning tithing just brought to mind resources, Carl. What would it take to be sure that everybody has the resources that they need? That will be very, very different in the education commons, for instance, where there will be revenue coming in, from a convening commons where there might not be revenue coming in, where the purpose of the overall infrastructure of creating the future is to make sure that in places where whether it's load equalizing or whatever, but to make sure that in places where the resources are needed, that there are resources. So what does that mean for ensuring that there are resources there? Go ahead, Carl. But it's occurring to me that these are structural questions of what are we going to create that will ensure that there's resources everywhere. Carl, go ahead. And then I see you smiling, Kim. So I want to know you.
I love the analogy of load balancing. Which is what sort of servers do when too much traffic goes to one server, when the software sends it off to another. So the load balancing mechanism for creating the future is that over time, some of that tithe money that's coming in might create a small pot that we use for grant making purposes that seeds those new ideas or new different ways forward.
Kim, what are you thinking?
I'm listening a lot. I'm learning a lot. One of the things that I've loved about this conversation so far is that no one has uttered the word empowerment, and it makes me very happy. Of course, empowerment is like the least empowering thing in the whole world, because I would have to have the power to give it to you. And so, but I really think about this book that I just finished called Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette. And the book, he was a submarine captain, a nuclear sub-captain in the U.S. Navy, which is the most hierarchical organization on the planet. And he completely changed the leadership structure of this organization by doing pretty much all of the things that you guys are describing within the confines of the United States Navy, which is incredible. So, highly recommend the book, and Stephen Covey wrote the foreword to it. But for me, I guess I want to see what I'm not clear is about kind of the guardians of the values piece. You know what I mean? I think that is super important. And when you have these people that are just coming into the organization, you can't expect them to completely get the values from day one. So there has to be some system or created so that people are really paying attention to what the values are. Yeah. And I'm already seeing and sitting here going nuts, thinking about the value of the work that we're doing here to membership organizations across our country who are really struggling to define what membership is. And, people don't want to join the Rotary. They want to build their tribe the way they want to build it. And so, that kind of the work that we're doing here just has really unique applications for me. So I don't know that I've added any value at all, but I'm just excited, and that's why I'm smiling.
Yeah. I love the fact that everybody's sitting. You want to talk about the permission piece? Everybody's sitting in these meetings since we've been having these meetings, which goes back to 2011. Says, I'm not sure I added any value today, and it's like, yeah, okay. Here's a thought that has been occurring to me, and Rebecca and I were talking about this when we were together in February, is the fact that we adopted a statement of our values in action back in 2012, and that it's definitely time to relook at that. And I just want to share with you a statement that Andrea shared on Facebook, that the Rainier Valley Corps in the weird place of Seattle, Carl, had adopted. This is their core values and team agreements. And I'm not going to read all of them, but it's the kind of things that as we look at really re-looking at our values and actions, the heading of community, 1, we leave no one behind. We create an environment where everyone of any race, ethnicity, class, age, religion, blah, 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 feels welcome and seen. 2, and I am just acknowledging that my saying blah, blah, blah is completely negated anybody feeling welcome and seen. 2, we welcome partners, children, and friends of our RVC family at RVC events. 3, we stop even briefly to say hi and check in with everyone who visits our office. So it's that granular of what they came up with, of what their values look like in action. And I'm thinking that probably the start to being the guardian of the values is our being more articulate about what our values are, and specifically what they look like in action. It's Rebecca.
There's a tweet.
And that was making me think of, people will continue to come forward with varying understanding of what this is, what creating the future is, where they swam up, and the role of the Sherpas, a plenitude of Sherpas, people who will be steeped in catalytic thinking and catalytic listening to really be hearing from someone, these are my strengths, these are my values, these are my outcomes, and to continue to be not just a one-off, but continue to shepherd and welcome that person wherever they swam up, but also letting them know of everything else that's around, orientation to the ocean in general, that there would be so many Sherpas everywhere, because we never know when and where someone will swim up.
Yeah. Troy?
A couple different things in my head, so let me see if I can keep them straight. I love the idea of the Sherpas, and my suspicion is that so we talk about over-engineering something in software development, and one of the things that I find that we get stuck on quite a bit is we'll see all of these potential problems that come up in the future, and we'll try and build systems and processes to overcome those problems before they ever actually happen, and the problem never actually happens. And so you invest an enormous amount of time and energy trying to overcome a problem that wasn't really a problem. So what I'm wondering is it necessary to actually build systems for the situation in which the Sherpas aren't present? Or is that not necessary, because the kind of people who are likely to show up and take roles and be at meetings and those kinds of things are the people that are familiar with the through line of the basically the goals and values and ideals and the way of making decisions and the tool set and those kinds of things. Are those people ever actually going to not be present? I don't know. But I look at models like, can you be familiar with the website network Stack Exchange? There's a Stack Exchange site for all sorts of different topics. And one of the things they do really, really well is that there are no decisions made about the content on the site that doesn't go through the community itself. It's all based on a series of upvoting. The moderators even are chosen by community elections. If something is going to be removed, it's because somebody has marked it for removal and 5 other people have voted on it to take something down. And so what you wind up with is like this really beautifully curated series of pieces of information that are a great reference point. And the kind of people who tend to get into the roles of like moderators and things are the ones who spend the most time as the Sherpas. They're the ones that really understand what the values of the community are. There's even like a meta conversation about, well, what are the values of the community? What should I do in this situation? What's the right way to curate this thing, etc. I wonder if there's some value in, I guess, focusing as much energy or into the communications piece. One of the points on the diamond that we were talking about earlier, because if the communications piece is good about transmitting any changes or important conversations and the outcomes of those important conversations about the values to begin with, in a way that it can clearly engage people and create a reference point to look back at. And then one of the rubrics for decision making is that you reference that and you look and see, what are the values? What's the latest thinking? Where is the community at? There's some value there that we can derive without it having to be about who happens to be here and how familiar they are, but rather, here's a set of steps that we go through when we make decisions. Here's the reference material we're going to refer to and the way of referring to it. And then was it thought about? Was it included? Something along those lines. The other thing that I wanted to say was back to the question about did I provide any value? And it just really struck me that sometimes it's really hard to see the value that you provide unless you are the person putting the last piece in the puzzle, because then you see the whole picture. But every individual piece that you put into the puzzle is just as important as the last one. You just may or may not have the context of what the whole puzzle looks like yet. But I think every contribution, every person helping to contribute a puzzle piece is just as valuable as the person who has the whole picture. And part of our task as people who are showing up to these kinds of things and being Sherpas is to continually draw people's attention back to, hey, look at the cover of the box, look at the picture. Here's the piece that you put in, and I know it might seem small, but look at the picture that you're contributing to.
I love what you're saying, Troy. It just resonates so much. And I do want to support the idea of revisiting the values and looking at how we're communicating and reminding people so that they can be the basis. I've heard a number of times over the course of today's discussion references to somebody's got to start looking at resources, and those advocacy Sherpas are going to be among those who need to understand the values best, because otherwise they won't know what kind of organizations we want relationships with who might provide resources. It's a key part of partnership, is to figure out whether your values align. I also want to mention that one of the reasons I really try to make time for these meetings is they're always a mix of people who've been at quite a few and people who've been at none or very few and are bringing fresh eyes, adding fresh context, giving us a new way of looking at things and keeping us from getting off onto jargon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Dimitri, you said
it's part of the everybody plays roles, and that's an enormously valuable role.
Dimitri's got some tweets.
And I figured, Jane, that's a good segue. Another tweet from Karen, defining org needs and movement needs as we consider structure may help. Collective enoughness is a vital part of the latter. No.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
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 And Stacy also tweeted, we rotate chairs halfway through board meetings, and the person who chaired last half chairs first half. No one starts cold. So
that's new.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I thought that was a really
very cool idea. Very cool idea. Here's what I'm coming up with, and it really fits into what Karen was talking about. So thank you for that, Karen, in terms of movement needs versus organizational needs. And the organization really is just one precondition for the movement. I'm seeing, and I'm going to try and articulate this very, very clearly. And Troy, I loved your talking about the word decisions. I'm looking at all the remnant language that we have from thousands of years of organizational development of stuff that we know doesn't work. And I'm thinking about what we actually do, Mark, for instance, in our facilitation team, is we facilitate each other. And so instead of decision making, it really is facilitation of taking action. And that may not be the exact words, but it is the group that's making stuff possible and facilitating the support of everybody making, getting stuff done. I'm seeing 3 pieces here right now that if you guys are interested in pursuing any one of these, I'm starting to see work teams happen by what you guys are excited about talking about. One is clearly the process of community engagement. And I'm also liking the fact that what I'm thinking about is process, that if we stop talking about structure, that the structures will come and the functions will come from the process of community engagement. Using catalytic thinking, what do we need community engagement to accomplish? What are the preconditions for success? And then what is the stuff that we'll build to create those conditions? There's the stuff we're going to need. There's the people we're going to need. So there's different roles, there's different stuff, all following the values. So there's the process of community engagement and using catalytic thinking to come up with what is a process that looks right for the organization as a whole, because it's again, I think each commons is going to have to come up with what does community engagement look like in the education commons that makes sense there. So as we're looking at creating the future as a whole, the second piece is that facilitation of taking action, formerly known as decision making 10 minutes ago. Which again is using catalytic thinking. What do we want to accomplish? The first thing probably that we're going to be looking at, what does good look like, is what do our values look like in action? And I think that a redefining of that is beautiful, and again aims really at that high potential for catalytic thinking. And from there, then what are the roles and functions again within the organization as a whole? And then the third piece is the resources piece. Which is that advocate for finding the resources and finding the people. Each of these is interlocking. I'm so, Lorette, I'm so grateful for you starting out the conversation by saying, it was like the very, very first thing, and we keep coming back to, they're all interlocking. And so I'm seeing these as talking to each other, but I'm really seeing those as 3 work teams that we can begin having those big conversations. And if we need other stuff, I think those 3 teams are going to start to manifest what that stuff is that we need. How does that sound to you guys? Does it sound bad to anybody?
It sounds like a good experiment to start with. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? But it could be the next thing that we experiment with. And if it doesn't work, then we'll adjust fire and try again.
And we know why it won't be perfect. And you and Angie know clearly more than anybody else why it won't be perfect, because this is a practice. It's not a perfect.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, because you're involved. And I was thinking, Hildy, that's not like you.
No, it's one of the
fingers at other people.
One of the things that we repeat over and over and over again.
Okay.
This is a practice. It's not a perfect. And so it won't be perfect. This is a practice. It's not perfect.
So, another tweet from Karen: shared values as criteria. It's implied that we must lift while we climb. So any all Sherpas at any all times equals organic for the whole.
Oh man, we need that written down.
It is.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. That definitely is beautiful. That is just beautiful. I know that we're about to lose Troy to a hard stop, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. What I would like to do is contact each of you afterwards to see A, if you'd like to play along, and B, what part of the playing along you'd like to continue to play with. And for right now, what I'd like to ask of you guys is reflections. What is standing out for you, and especially what you're feeling about whatever is standing out in ahas. And let's start with Troy, because I know you've got a hard stop in about 30 seconds.
I guess my reflection is that, as usual, I'm just very honored to be involved with you guys, all of you. And it's been a pleasure to get to know some new faces that I haven't had a chance to interact with before, and to talk about things that I feel like are meaningful. Meaningful not only to my own life, but to all of your lives and the lives of your clients and the people you consult with and the organizations that you're parts of and all the folks that are out there tweeting and on the web and that sort of thing. Just what an honor it is to be involved in this and help to contribute whatever puzzle pieces we're all bringing to the table right now. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here with you. And I do have to get going, but I will look forward, Hildy, to touching base with you in the near future about work groups and such.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Namaste.
And you guys all get to know why we love having Troy around.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Troy. Who else? What is standing out to any of you as we close down this rapid fire conversation?
Well, for me, I find myself yet again kind of not really sure what just happened, which is consistent with the conversations like this I'm in with Creating the Future. And part of the stress for me, it's almost a stress. As a firstborn, maybe as a person who's comfortable in hierarchical situations, maybe as a white male, and I'm struggling to come to grips with the genetic history that I have, is that while all the democracy and the legs of the starfish are great, and I'm experiencing one of those, which is great, in the Facebook group, I'm really not worried, but aware of and wondering, well, wait a minute, what about the central part? Because those legs of the starfish all kind of have a central spot, that a leg doesn't just break off from another leg, it breaks off from a hub. And how does the hub survive? Who's funding the hub? And who's taking care of the people that are in the hub? Because soul care is so important. And while all this stuff is going on out here, they don't even know there's a hub necessarily. There's a lot of Facebook group people that forget that this is a part of Creating the Future. So there's still this, but wait, what about, and I'm not sure if it's what about the rules, which has been something that we've talked a lot about in Facebook, not wanting to be devolved into, or if it's part of a workforce team of, hey, let's make sure the hub is cared for and fed and nurtured too. I'm not sure where that's at, but it's definitely in practice.
Well, and I'm grateful for your forthrightness about that, and I'm really seeing that as the big next question. If we're talking about resources, community engagement, and facilitation decision making of, call it the hub, call it the ocean, call it whatever you want, the thing that supports everything else, what makes sure that's supported?
So as the fundraising guy here, I'll say for the recording and for people here, if you're not yet giving monthly, even a small amount, if this is something that's adding value to your life and part of your professional development and growth as a human being, I really strongly encourage you to do it. I do it with PayPal. It's very easy. And it's something that kind of puts a little bit more skin in the game, although the value of the time that you've given and the expertise that you continue to give is good. If you're not contributing financially also, I challenge you to consider that.
Thank you, fundraising coach.
I am
.com.
I'm going to piggyback on what Mark just said and offer another model, one that struck me years ago. I keep on hearing the discussion about values, and I think that is so terrifically important. Whenever I've seen an organization that thought it was going to be a movement that wasn't able to live its full life, it was because somewhere along the way they got so caught up in management that they forgot the values. And staying focused on those values and constantly using them as rubrics for everything, I think is absolutely critical. But the model I wanted to mention was one of a spider plant, something I don't have in my life anymore because I kill plants so well. Wow. But that idea that you launch a sibling whole, it's not a seed, it's not a flower. You get the little sprout off of it and you get the whole plant, and then Heldy's all excited because it's resonating with her. I'm glad. So how do we actually understand that? so that as we use the values as the rooting mechanism for the next generation, that's the thing that sprouts the little spider plant of each of these community groups, as any commons that we create, as anything else that needs to come into fruition as a program, so that we don't say, this, yeah, we think we believe in this, but we're not being it anymore. We must be it, otherwise you've lost it.
Well, and the reason that I'm smiling such a big smile, Loretta, so thank you for that. Oh my gosh, thank you for that. And I'm so sad that Justin's not on the line anymore. We have talked for years about the fact that everything at Creating the Future is fractal, that everything is the whole of, and so that image of the spider plant coming out whole is just, I was like, yes, it's a pictorial, and when people say, what the hell is fractal? We can go, it's that.
That's it.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Carl, what's standing out for you?
I'm also going to have to go soon, unfortunately. What stands out for me is probably echoing Mark's point, and indeed I think points I've made at many board meetings at Creating the Future before, and it is that at the same time I both immensely enjoyed the conversations and I find them really stimulating, and I really like exploring the ideas. But in parallel, I also sometimes feel a bit of a frustration is the wrong word, but a sort of a sense that we seem to go around in circles, and it doesn't feel like we advance hugely, which may be because I dip in and dip out of meetings and so on. But I suppose I don't feel like I have a line of sight of quite where we're going.
You and I will have a conversation and we'll catch you up.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me that. Dimitri.
I'm going to talk about Karen's tweet for a second, and then I'll give my reflection. And Karen says, we'll leave you with my favorite quote: what we risk reveals what we value. Thanks for a great conversation. And I think that, speaking of Loretta, when you were talking about values, it's really what we're talking about here is the values.
Yeah.
I want to comment on and sort of reflect on some of the things that both Mark and Carl said. That part of it is in trusting the process and trusting the room. That I have seen remarkable things happen where I didn't see how that could happen. And we were in Idaho a few weeks back, and we were at a community hub meeting that Rebecca has been doing for a year, I think, or whatever the time is. And it was remarkable to see how the people were all interacting with each other without a set of a core other than the values of why they were there. And there were people coming and going. So it wasn't like this is the same group that's here all the time. It was a fluctuating group of people. So my reflection is, and how I feel at this point is I guess, a feeling of excitement and anticipation for this next stage, with the faith and the belief, having seen it happen elsewhere, what's potentially possible here. And I know that doesn't answer the, who pays the bill on Tuesday, but it does.
But eventually it will.
Eventually, I think it will. So that's
okay.
Yeah. Bye-bye, Carl. Thank you. Good luck. We're thinking of you. You are in our thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
Who else? What's standing out? Yeah.
I can jump in. There are two things. One, I just became the chair of Mode Shift Omaha, which is an organization that we started here in Omaha, which is essentially struggling with exactly the same issues. We're trying to build a movement. How do we build a movement? How do we create a core but have people who are jumping in and doing things? that feel empowered. Sorry, I didn't mean to mention that word. To feel like they have the permission to jump in and just do stuff. Like they don't need to be on the board to just do stuff, but they need to know certain things to do stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to say, like, whatever we figure out with creating the future is exactly what the same thing that I need to figure out with mode shift, and it's a struggle. So I really appreciate having these conversations. Now I need to try to figure out how to go back to my board and explain it all somehow of how we can figure out together how to do these things. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and I guess relates to Mark's points and Carl's points and Dimitri's points. I just watched Selma this weekend. I think it took me a long time to finally watch it. But it really struck me how when we think about the civil rights movement, we think about, and it was true that a lot of stuff was happening, right? And people were doing things in different communities. But at some point, in the case of Selma, Martin Luther King and the Southern Leadership Council leadership went there specifically to try to make something happen. And they had to sort of, in a way, take control of what was, and what the situation was, and try to create a kind of crisis point. And so it strikes me that there, with that example, what we've been talking about, that there is this important element that needs to happen where there is kind of a leadership that will make these kind of crisis points happen somehow. Now, they don't have to always be bad, and hopefully people don't have to get killed in this case, but how do we kind of have that openness, but sometimes have to have a centralized something happening? And that's exactly the same thing that we're trying to struggle with at Mode Shift as well.
I'm so excited to find out what the multitude of answers are to that. Kim, Rebecca, Jane, what is popping for any of you guys?
I think for me, the idea of not having like a traditional structure is fraught with a little bit of discomfort. I mean, it's what we've come to expect, and will there be pandemonium? And I think that the thing that we've talked about, though, is the values, and it's not just about what the values are, but it's what the values look like in action. And I think being able to articulate what the values look like in action is probably, from my perspective, the biggest piece of getting people to be able to operate in this way and still be effective. Because, I think we've all seen times where people felt like they understood the values, but their interpretation of them, may be different. And so, we even see that sometimes on the Facebook page, but is this or is this not self-promotion, right? So when you have that idea of this is what it looks like, I think that's going to be tremendously important moving forward. But I've so enjoyed this discussion. Thank you for letting me be part of it.
So glad you were here. So glad you were here. Who's next?
I'll go. Hildy, some time ago and during this meeting, you mentioned the dance between, the theory, catalytic thinking, our framework, and the doing. And this conversation was that journey, in the sense of, look where we went to looking at these 3 work teams. And then again, what will we do? We will use catalytic thinking to say, what will it look like? And then what will it take? And what will everyone need in all of the human conditions? So it's modeling, and it moves to action. We have moved very explicitly to action today.
Yeah, we really have.
Yeah, I feel like the path before us is clearer than it was. Maybe not that many steps ahead, but it doesn't have to be, because you're experimenting on whether this is the right path, but deciding to ground everything in the values and make sure they're current and understood and articulated well fits very well with how I like to see things happening, as this ethical lens. And I want to match that up with the worry about the hub and the center of the starfish, because I don't think that we're matching that we're providing sufficient resources for that hub to live our values. And that to me is a priority. I know it's something the formal structure talked about a number of times back before we went to this, whatever it is. I don't want to lose that. Now that there's less formality, that still needs to be on the table as a priority.
Yeah.
But I am glad to see the next steps in the path. And it's really hard to keep up with what's happening at Creating the Future, even if you're at 3 meetings a week, I find. The path is perhaps broader than it used to be. It turned into a multi-lane highway on us.
That does
But we're still building the next section. There's no asphalt. It's dirt road ahead of us, and we have to keep building it.
Well, the fun part for me is that we're not just building the plane while we're flying it. We're trying to decide, is this really a plane, or what if this was like
A submarine.
or a dog with wings, or a spider plant that flies, or we're not even sure what this thing is, and we're flying it. I'm just feeling deep, deep gratitude for each and every one of you. This has been, Rebecca, you said it. We've turned the corner. We've been talking about one of the things, and I wish Carl were still here, but one of the things that in several meetings past, when the board finally said, I think we're blowing ourselves up and starting over again, what several board members who have been on the board since the beginning said is, this is the answer to the question we've been struggling with since we started. It hasn't felt right. The disconnect between our values, who we are, what our mission is, and this group of people who thinks they just legally need to meet all the time, just hasn't felt right. And whatever it is we build, this feels like the answer to the question we've been living for the past 7 years. And we turned a corner today. We turned a corner last time when we said we were going to take action, and we turned a corner today where the next thing is groups getting together to figure this out. So I could not be more grateful to each and every one of you. It's hard not to do a happy dance sitting in my chair here. So thank you guys, each and every one of you, and I will see you somewhere online in the next couple of days, and know that you're going to be getting an email from somebody saying, okay, do you want to play? Thank you guys so much. And to Karen,
see you in Boston.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.